What's up, guys? It's Logan from NoleGameday.com. We're here live in Indianapolis. Got Lucas Oil Stadium back there. We're a couple days now into the NFL Combine. We've got a couple FSU players here in attendance, actually 4 in total. Alex Mastromanno's here, who was helping hold the ball for Ryan Fitzgerald in his kicking duties yesterday, but also got a chance to speak with AZ just a little bit ago. We'll talk about his interview as well. Talk with Ryan Fitzgerald. Had him one-on-one a few days ago as well. 2, Joshua Farmer. We'll talk about that. Was trying to get him with an interview, but I'll detail what happened there. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a FSU commit on the defensive side of the ball. And overall, we'll talk about, a strength and conditioning assistant coach going and joining Liam Cohen's staff in Jacksonville with the Jaguars. With me this afternoon is Austin Beasy, our lead basketball writer at NoleGameday.com. And over to the side is D-Lou, our editor-in-chief. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Happy NFL Combine week.
Yeah, it's a big week. Obviously not as many Florida State guys in Indy as last year, but, still we've seen AZ and Farmer pop up in that top 50, and Ryan Fitzgerald going to have a chance to get a shot at the NFL too. So it's going to be an important couple of days for these guys.
It's busy season over here. We're reaching the last few weeks of college basketball season. Planning to go to a lot of games over the next few weeks, a lot of travel. And in the middle of all that, we've got NFL Combine talk, guys trying to figure out where they're going. It's an exciting time. February and March is always fun.
Yeah, February is secretly like a sneaky busy month, and this is the first time here, my chance being at the NFL Combine. Wish I would have came last year where there was a lot more of FSU players, but there still is some talented guys coming from FSU with Joshua Farmer. AZ getting a lot of buzz. We've been putting out a lot of articles on NoleGameday.com about him, some sneaking in to the first round for AZ. I think USA Today, one of their latest projections, had him as a first-round pick. But then all throughout, though, Ryan Fitzgerald, I talked with him as well, saying that a lot of teams have gotten in contact with him. He said all 32 teams. It's kind of interesting. Okay, I feel like they're pretty safe there on a kicker, but the Ravens might be looking for a kicker over there in Baltimore with all the stuff going on with Justin Tucker. So we'll talk about his interview in just a minute. But first off, just going into NFL Combine week, what kind of excites you from this? Because, last year we had a lot of FSU guys, and, you saw Braden Fisk just absolutely tear it up, and he just blew his stock up. And of course, Jared Verse being Jared Verse, we knew what he was going to do. And now you'd see it translates onto the field with the Rams and Sean McVay in LA. But, what are y'all looking into going into this combine? It could be FSU guys or just overall. To me, it's one of my favorite weeks of the off season.
Yeah, I would say for me, I just want to see how Joshua Farmer stacks up amongst that defensive line group, because it seems like a very talented crop of defensive linemen in Indy this year. And I mean, you look at it, I think there's seven or eight defensive tackles in that top 50 range, give or take. So depending on how Farmer performs today, and, we'll see how he does with the measurements and that stuff, and then as well as getting on the field with the athletic testing and then the on-field drills as well. We'll see where he stacks up exactly, and that'll probably give us a little bit of a better idea of where he's going to go in April.
Yeah, I'm excited for AZ. I think you just talked about him being a potentially first-round guy. He's absolutely talented enough, and I think this week is going to be huge for that. He had a great Senior Bowl performance down there in Mobile, and getting a chance to be in front of even more scouts, even more team personnel, and seeing how he stacks up against everybody in the class is going to be huge for him, because the top few corners really aren't set. Obviously, Travis Hunter, but there's some question marks about Will Johnson at Michigan. There's question marks about Ben Morrison at Notre Dame and his injury concerns. Siobhan Revel's dealing with stuff from ECU. So AZ really has a chance to get in those top 2 or 3 corners with a really strong week here.
So I don't know if you guys can see in the background, got Lucas Oil Stadium back there. We will be seeing Josh Farmer out there and some workouts. I've been seeing on his social media that he is going to probably be running the 40. Didn't get a chance to speak with him yesterday. I waited about 3 hours at the podium for him. A lot of the defensive line were late to it. They were going through medical exams with teams. So that delayed it. So what ends up happening is I go ahead. I'm like, all right, 3 hours is enough. I've been standing straight for 3 hours trying to hold a spot there. I go upstairs. I'm like, I need a sip of water. The second I get up to my seat, which is about probably a 5-10 minute walk, getting back up to the media room upstairs, I get a call. Joshua Farmer's come to the podium. So I get my phone. I run downstairs. Right when I get downstairs, he's done with media. I think he lasted maybe like about 5 minutes max. So that just completely screwed up everything yesterday. But before that, though, I was able to speak with Ryan Fitzgerald, a little one-on-one there. I asked him about his, one of his biggest strengths, and he felt like his contact with the ball is one of his biggest talents. I asked him too, going through that 2-10 season, what he learned, and he talked about the leadership, and some guys that weren't leaders had to kind of step up in that role, and he felt like he was able to do that as well. He also talked about Carter Barfield, the former kickers coach with the Seminoles, now over there with Tulsa, getting a opportunity there as a strength and conditioning coach. Gave him a lot of love as well. But I think he is going to have a chance. We'll see if he ends up in the draft or right after the draft and getting picked up by a team as a free agent. But kickers, there's a lot of inconsistencies in some regard for some of these guys out there, and Ryan Fitzgerald showed that he can have that consistency. Had a really strong season last year as a Lugro finalist, and I'm interested to see what kind of opportunity he could get moving forward. I actually ran into a guy with some long hair a little bit with Alex Mastromano on the street. I was like, what is he doing here? And I asked him, what is he doing here? Because it really wasn't shared that he was going to be in Indianapolis, but he was actually going to be the I guess, placeholder for Ryan Fitzgerald. And that ended up happening yesterday. Sadly, the media doesn't have availability for us to view those. I wish I could have been there in attendance for that in the stadium. But that's why Mastromano's here, and I'm sure it gave him a good opportunity, hopefully, to meet with some teams as well. But I think, to me, Ryan Fitzgerald's strength in his leg and what he showed last year with his consistency and reliability is what is going to put him as one of the top specialists going into this year's upcoming draft.
It's a really interesting scenario, right? Because Ryan Fitzgerald, he's really trending up and in the right direction as he goes into the NFL. Obviously, you look back at his time at Florida State, and there was some inconsistency during that 2022 season. Florida State obviously brought in another kicker to compete with Fitzgerald, and that kind of pushed him in the right direction, got him back on track. And, we saw him respond in 2023, and then obviously this past season going perfect on field goals outside of that one that was blocked. And he's consistently hitting from 50 yards, which when you look at the NFL game today, it kind of, almost seems like those are a layup for a lot of kickers around the league. So I think he's got the accuracy, obviously the leg strength and power, and then his mentality. Normally you don't see kickers when they have a season like he did in 2022 respond and get back on track like he did. And I mean, man, I think it says a lot about the player in person he is.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if that shaky season in 2022 will hinder his NFL future at all, because he did try to change some things with his technique based on what he said, and it didn't work. He went just 12 of 20, I think it was, but was really solid these last few years, and hopefully that lands him an NFL opportunity. Obviously, there's only 32 kicking jobs in the NFL, and it's one of the hardest jobs to get. But he's played well the last few years, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him land at least somewhere with a practice squad opportunity to start.
Mm-hmm. And then, too, I want to note on Farmer, sadly, did not get that interview like I had mentioned. But just talking with some media and also, too, just looking at some of the mock drafts, I was talking with one of our Rams publishers, and he asked me about Farmer, and they brought up Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and the potential of actually adding Farmer into that defensive line. I'm interested to get y'all's thoughts on that, because Braden Fisk and Joshua Farmer, those two could be a wrecking ball and a really nasty tandem on the inside. But something about Farmer is you want to give him those one-on-one opportunities. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be a filler. He's not like a Derek Nottie where he's going to take on two. He's not that kind of guy. It's kind of like Braden Fisk a little bit as well. But for Farmer, you want to give him in those one-on-one opportunities to be able to put your hands on him and then also move around an offensive lineman and get to the backfield and create pressure. I'm interested to get y'all's take on that, because it sure seems like some of the media here And like I was just saying too, over there with the Rams media, think that would be a good fit, matching him up over there with his former teammates and Verse and Fisk. And Sean McVay, man, he loves FSU talent, and he's done a good job of evaluating that and putting it out as a product onto the field.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think the Rams or Sean McVay would be opposed to bringing on another former Florida State defender. And we actually saw it, I think it was in that NFL.com mock draft just a couple of days ago, with Farmer being projected to the LA Rams in the first round, I believe. I mean, somewhere in that range. So his stock is certainly on the rise since the Senior Bowl. Obviously very impressive to see what he did from the beginning to end of his college career with how his body matured and developed over those years. I mean, came in, around 250 pounds and then walked out of Florida State, a chiseled monster around that 315 to 320 pound mark. Still some inconsistencies game to game, but, he does have some of those dominant stretches. And, you point back to when he was healthy during that 2023 season. That's really when Florida State's defense was clicking at one of its best levels of that year when they won the ACC championship. And, he was right there along Verse and Fisk in that title game having a performance. So to add him to that defense, and you already saw what Fisk and Verse did last year as rookies, I could see it happening.
I just, as fun as it would be to see all those Florida State guys on that defensive line, I just don't know that the Rams need it. Obviously, they drafted Jared Verse and Braden Fisk last year. You already have Kobe Turner, who's been phenomenal for them on the defensive line. You have Byron Young coming off the edge as well. Bobby Brown played really well as a nose tackle for them last year. I just don't know that that's the biggest need for them this year, especially with, there's questions about Matt Stafford's future with the Rams, and they have so many offensive line questions with all the injuries they had last year. They might be moving on from Cooper Kupp this offseason. I think there's so many other needs that team needs other than defensive line, which was really, really good last year. And it was the biggest reason they made an NFC title game appearance.
Yeah, that front seven
divisional
was
round. Sorry.
Nasty. Yeah. I'm gonna say that the front seven for the Rams were absolute monsters and wrecking offenses throughout the year. To me, I wanted to see Farmer. I wanted to interview him because I want to talk about his health. I mean, the biggest thing that's been hindering him is that hand. We saw that injury. What was it? We saw it at practice before that Orange Bowl game against Georgia, and we really didn't expect for him to play in that game anyways. But throughout that season, though, the rehab that he was having to go through and trying to become fully healthy, and it felt like the last 2 years he wasn't a fully healthy Joshua Farmer. And so that's why I wanted to spend some time with him this week and say, hey, how has the rehab process gone? Do you feel 100%? How the medical evaluation's gone for you? Because I think that's one thing, most likely maybe why I waited 3 friggin' hours, because a lot of the teams wanted to meet with him and talk about that, because that's going to, that's all on his records coming from Florida State. And they want to evaluate that, because if he's fully healthy, yeah, that is a very, very talented defensive lineman, but he's got to be a healthy guy in order to get out there onto the field.
Yeah, that'll be something to watch, because
that's one thing.
It'll be something to watch as far as his health, because I think that popped up somewhere around the middle of the 2023 season, and he fought through that injury during the second half of the campaign, and then after Florida State was snubbed from the college football playoff, decided to go ahead and have surgery to correct that issue. And it seemed like it continued to hinder him throughout the offseason last year, at tour of duty, during spring practice as well. So it'd be interesting to see if he's fully over that.
And then just wrapped up an interview there with AZ. He spent about 12 minutes talking with the media, and man, really, really intelligent. That's something that was not a shocker to us. We spent some time with him after practices, after games, speaking with him, and really impressive young man. He had a really good standout performance too at the Senior Bowl. Just talking to some of our fellow Bucks beat, they gave a lot of stars to him. And, to me, what stands out is, of course, his frame, his size, also too, the youngest here at one of the youngest here at the Combine. There's a lot to like from the young man. I think, to me, looking at from what scouts are probably looking at, is just he pointed out, what was his biggest game from last season, because everybody kind of overlooked the FSU Seminoles because of that 2-10. He said he thought his most impressive game was against Notre Dame this last year, and he felt that he had an impressive showing in that. Of course, the game did not go and result how they wanted to, but at least in his performance, he felt like he did well. I'm interested to see what y'all's takes are on, is this a potential sneaky first-round guy, or, which I still think is great as a second-round talent, because there are, like you just said, BZ, there are a lot of teams in the league that are looking for some secondary help, specifically, though, at the cornerback position. And there was a 49ers writer here as well bringing up the point. Renardo Green had a really, really good season last year. He's projected to be a starter this upcoming season. They're also looking for another corner on the other side. There's a lot of teams that could be interested in what AZ could bring to a defense.
I thought BZ was going first since you said his name in your.
Sorry, I was looking up his measurements real quick from the Senior Bowl. I think it's he measured in at the Senior Bowl at 6'1.5", so he'll be 6'2" in cleats, almost 200 pounds. That's the prototypical NFL corner. That's what teams want these days. I think that 40-yard dash is going to be something to watch with him. If he can run in the low 4.4s, and I don't see why he couldn't be a first-round pick, given his size. And great, yeah, you mentioned it. Florida State was pretty terrible last year. But even when he was on the field in 2023 playing with Renardo, Jarian, and Cypress, he was still playing very well, showed some versatility by being able to play in the slot. So having a guy that can play inside or out, that versatility is going to matter to a lot of teams. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the third corner off the board come NFL draft time. But there's a lot of talented corners, but there's also a lot of teams that need corners, including my Minnesota Vikings. So I think there's going to be a lot of options for him, especially at that latter half of the first round. There's just so many teams that need a starting quality corner.
I don't even know if it would necessarily be a sneaky first round pick anymore, because he's really starting to get that buzz from multiple NFL draft analysts. And like BZ said, really started this rise at the Senior Bowl, which has kind of been a popular thing that we've seen for multiple former Florida State players over the last couple of years. But you guys have kind of already said it. AZ, he's got the length. It's going to be very interesting to see what he comes in at. I think he's going to have a very impressive wingspan as well. So, his athletic measurements are going to be among the tops of any cornerback in this draft. And then we have to see how he does in the testing portion. If he can get in that, what do you guys think, that under that 4.5 range, maybe even a little bit faster than that, I think that could help him with, how long of a strider he is. And then, you look at what he did at Florida State, obviously only a full-time starter this past season in 2024, but Florida State didn't stay in a lot of games, but this guy continued to be on that field. Even when it was a blowout game against Miami, AZ was still out there competing in the fourth quarter, played, I think, almost 200 more snaps than any other player on the roster last year. And Logan, you pointed out his age. This is a guy who still has sky-high potential, and I point to just that 1 year of being a starter at the college level. He could really continue to unlock those tools in the NFL.
I think 4.45 is the time he needs to be aiming for. I think getting close to that 4.5 mark, obviously we saw Renardo Green hit, what was it, 4.49 last year off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly. And he went at the end of the second round. I think if AZ can get to that 4.45 mark, I think that could solidify him in that first round.
It would help him. His vertical speed down the line is not one of his best attributes, I'd say. But for him specifically, he's a physical guy. He's going to put his hands on you. He's good in press. That's something that he talked about today when I brought up playing for Coach Surtain. You're going to play man. That's how it's going to be in that defense, and what Adam Fuller previously ran for Florida State. But Coach Surtain is going to want to have you put your hands on those wide receivers, and that's something that I think a lot of scouts are very interested in, along with the coaching staffs and the league too. He also brought up, he gave some shout-outs. He gave some thank yous to some guys that are now currently in the league, like Keon Cohen with the Buffalo Bills, in tandem now with Josh Allen. Also, too, gave some love to Johnny Wilson, now with the Eagles, a Super Bowl champion wide receiver now. But he gave some love to those guys, saying, whenever I got to go against those in practice, I took it seriously. I took everything I could from it, because I knew eventually those guys would be stars in the NFL. And, he also gave some shout outs to some other guys, even got a shout out to Deuce Span, but, just gave some love to a lot of his former teammates, talked about also Jarian Jones. There could be a possibility where the Jaguars would want to snag him as well, because they're looking for some help and joining Jarian in the rookie season that he had, except for getting hurdled by Saquon Barkley. But it is Saquon Barkley. But James Coleman was there, for one of our friends, former FSU player here at the NFL Combine as well, but brought up that idea of, hey, you could join Jarian Jones as well, and just was giving a lot of love to them and also to his brother. I asked him, how much of a help has it been having a brother that's been in the league but also has gone through the same process? And he said, it's been such a massive help in a lot of different ways. And, one thing that stood out to me, I think, through this interview is, he's not trying to follow in anybody's footsteps. He's not trying to follow in Jarian Jones' footsteps. He's not trying to follow in Ronaldo Green's. This is his own journey. And a lot of this is predicated on his faith as well. And he also talked about, what would he be doing if he wasn't going into the league? What kind of professional career would he do? And he said he's going to take on sports broadcasting. So here's the deal, AZ. We got an open opportunity for you here on the show. Whenever that time arises, I don't think we're going to have any time of that anytime soon. I think you're going to have a long career, but he wants to get into sports broadcasting, but also to help single mothers and also to sick children. So as we all know, AZ, a really, really good person off the field and a special athlete too on the field.
Yeah, a high character guy, and has always done it the right way on and off the field at Florida State, a positive presence in the locker room, in the community. And, I think as NFL teams get a chance to see what he can do athletically and between the lines in Indy, they're also going to be very impressed in these meetings when they figure out the type of person that he is.
He also brought up Mike Norvell as well as a coach, and, how his coaching is. And he said one of the biggest takeaways was the mental aspect that he brought to the table of how he was. He brought up tour of duty too in front of all the media. It's funny how that just is kind of spreading everywhere, and how much that is not an easy thing to go through. He brought up that the EMS, the ambulances, are staged right outside every morning. And, he said that it's practically all a mental game at the end of the day. Yes, it's going to put a wear on your body, but it all comes from up top. And he said he just enjoyed being coached by Mike Norvell because of the tenacity, the energy that he brought. That was always going to be consistent from Coach Norvell. But the mental game and response, and that's something Mike Norvell we've always heard from, is responding. We've seen it. We saw with Deuce Span, a guy that made some mistakes on the field, but was put out there on the next play and took advantage of that opportunity and responded. And it was good to see, though, AZ giving some love to Norvell. And like I had mentioned earlier, Coach Surtain, who's a coach that continues to garner talent at the high school level, also and developing and getting guys to the league. AZ, potential first-round pick, that goes a long way in what they want to do on the recruiting side, D-Lou, and getting some of these top talented defensive backs from across the country into Tallahassee.
It's huge. I mean, you look at it over the last couple of years, obviously Jarian and Renardo, but you had Jamie go a couple of years ago as well. And then now AZ potentially being up there in that first round. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely, adds some more feathers in the cap to Pat Surtain's resume, Mike Norvell as well, and, continues to show that Florida State is getting back to that point of producing elite defensive backs year after year. And, there are some guys on the roster right now, maybe not necessarily as proven as some of these guys that were drafted these past couple of years, but guys who could rise into that position starting here in this 2025 season. So still a lot to like in that Florida State defensive back room. And, obviously Shaheem Brown, the veteran there.
So we're at the combine. I love the 40-yard dash. I wish I could get down there and run it. I'd probably pull my hamstring and snap everything. But I do love the 40-yard dash. I'm seeing if we're going to break any records. I don't know. I've heard some names. Maybe that, I don't know if it's the East Carolina kid, that DB. we're going to see tomorrow. We'll have defensive linemen here soon. Like I said, I think everything begins at 3 o'clock in the stadium. And so we'll have some coverage there of Joshua Farmer, I do believe. I wish I could have spoke with them, but I know that he will most likely be doing the 40. I would imagine he's doing defensive line drills as well. I'm going to keep an eye on his hand too, just see how things are going there. But then talk with AZ, he will be competing as well. So we will get that 40. We will get those drills. He pointed out that he's looking forward to doing defensive back drills the most. He feels like he can stand out in that. And then Ryan Fitzgerald, he already did his stuff. Like I said, I wish media could go see. I mean, we care about kickers here. We care about kickers here at NoleGameday just because one did a really good job last year prior. But Ryan Fitzgerald, hopefully soon we're looking to hopefully get these guys here on some interviews as well. So I'm interested to see what's just going on with the 40s, man. I love a 40-yard dash. I like seeing measurements as well. Anything that you guys are looking forward to watching, it can be outside of FSU guys as well.
I'm just wondering why the kicker workout is private. I mean, what are they hiding from us? You get to watch everything else, but not the kicking workout?
You would have the media there. You would think having the media there could add some suspense, could be a challenge, just like how Mike Norvell, you would see it at practices. He's literally standing right next to Ryan Fitzgerald. It was hilarious. D'Lo, you remember, being up there, we'd be up there watching from Dick Hauser, and we watch down, we get the binoculars out, and we'd go look and see where Mike Norvell's at, and you see him right next to Ryan Fitzgerald, just standing there, just right before he kicks the ball, and just anything like that. I think the scouts would like to see that. I'm sure their scouts watched him earlier, but come on, I want to be there for that. I want to see some bombs that Fitzgerald's nailing. Definitely when you're in a dome like that, no wind, don't have to worry about nothing. Let's see how far that leg can go.
Yeah, without Norvell next to him, I'm sure he was going perfect out there.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm most excited just to see the 40-yard dash, because that's just always something I like to watch from the skill players to the big guys. You always get something interesting. I don't know if we're going to see an Xavier Worthy like performance this season and a record-breaking 40-yard dash, but either way, it always provides some intrigue.
I'm looking forward to, I forget what they call when the D line, do they call it the gauntlet drill when they're going up and down through the pads? It's whatever Braden Fisk killed last year. Like, he just stormed through it. I want to see how Josh Farmer does with that, because obviously Braden Fisk was a very special performance. I want to see how Farmer compares to him on that level.
Yeah, Fisk, I feel like his stock blew up here at the Combine. It started at the Senior Bowl as well, impressing there. But then whenever he got over to the Combine, did well. I mean, look at Trey Benson too as well. Jared Verse, Johnny Wilson, like the things that you can do here to shine after, a season that Florida State had last year where it was kind of diminished and how much media was probably giving them some love and showing some of these guys that are here now in Indianapolis. It gives them an opportunity to be on there at the big stage here in Indianapolis and show out as much as they can. I'm interested too. I want to see if Farmer's going to do the bench. He's a really, really, really strong defensive lineman. Interested to see how he does there as well. So I'm going to try to pop over there and see that later. But it's an interesting experience here at the Combine. You just kind of walk by. I was at dinner last night, opened the door for Al Golden going into the restaurant. I was like, who is that? Who is that? And one of our Bengals
the door
publishers.
In his face.
He was a really nice guy. It was nice. He was nice. But now he's over there with the Cincinnati Bengals as their new defensive coordinator, joining Zach Taylor. But you just don't never know who you're going to see here. We saw the whole thing with Jordan Schultz from Fox and was it Ian?
Were you at Starbucks?
Going at it, and I wasn't at the Starbucks, but I know which Starbucks that is. It's right down the road. Drama at the Combine between reporters.
I also learned that Jordan Schultz, his dad, owned Starbucks.
Yep, the CEO. Mm-hmm.
What's the Nepo baby complained about?
I know, right? I know.
Logan's looking side to side to make sure he's not around.
You got to watch what you're saying. You never know who you might walk by over here. But yeah, no, it's been a really cool experience so far. Definitely one that I'll most likely come back for. I'm just a nerd for the combine as a whole, and we haven't even gotten to the stadium yet. So looking forward to seeing what these big boys do here soon. Travis Hunter was just up on the podium. I put out a tweet. I'm just kind of engagement farming there, just playing around, having some fun. Let's just have some fun. Let's relax. But I got people coming after me, but I did ask for it. But Travis Hunter had a big old crowd around him. I couldn't even hear what he was even saying. That's how many people were over there. But, looking at some of the other talent that was around. I forgot. I asked Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle, about Micah Pettis. We just put out an article on that at NoleGameday.com if you want to go read it. But asked him about Micah Pettis facing him, one of his former teammates, and gave me a pretty interesting quote saying that he's a crazy guy and maybe a little bit of a dirty player, talks a lot of trash, but was one of his favorite offensive linemen to go against because it was a challenge every time. And, I saw some comments on Twitter around that quote. And, not a lot of people complaining that maybe he's a little bit of a nasty player because, you know what? Florida State fans want a nasty offensive lineman and tired of kind of the patty cake that they've been seeing in the trenches the last few years.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that, but hey, if it stops opposing defenders from getting to the quarterback and it doesn't get flagged, do what you got to do.
Well, whenever Micah Pettis committed to FSU, like you saw looking at film, I know there's some highlights of him and everything, and whenever there's a touchdown made, Micah Pettis is going to be in that end zone celebrating and talking some trash. So I'm looking forward to it. I think y'all are going to have a fun spring camp with him. A guy like that on the offensive line, I'm all about it. I think they need some change there. They need a physical offensive tackle. And if he's a guy that chirps, sign me up. Because, too, you look at what they're going to do at the defensive end room. There's some guys that need to step up. When we preview that here soon in our spring camp preview, that defensive end room, there's some guys that are going to have to step up and see who wants to take that next step. And I'm interested to see who decides to do that. And there's a lot of transfers coming in as well. So it should be pretty entertaining for D-Lou when camp begins, when the pads come on, I should say.
Yeah, and Pettis, a guy who plays through the whistle. So we'll see how those officials out there at spring practices operate while watching him.
Dude, I'm telling you, I would get some popcorn and I would pay some money to see Micah Pettis versus Jared Verse. Two chirpers, two guys that like to talk some trash. I think I would fly up there, D-Lou, and Uber over to the practice field. Here's a question here from Monterey. Who do y'all see getting drafted this season from this year's team? Well, we kind of touched on these guys. I mean, we'll see what happens with Fitz. I think it's someone you got to be I can't say Justin Tucker anymore, both on the field and off the field. But let's just say like a Chris Boswell, also to the Cowboys kicker. You got to be that, really, really, really unique talent. But I think Fitzgerald's going to get an opportunity potentially after the draft. Someone's going to pick him up. But, AZ is going to get drafted, and we'll see Joshua Farmer get drafted as well. Just depends on where they're going to be at in those rounds, really. That's the big question mark.
Yeah, I think Farmer and AZ are probably the only two that are a lock to be selected from Florida State this year. Fitzgerald might be able to slide in there somewhere in those final 2 or 3 rounds, depending on what certain teams are looking for and, what needs that they've already addressed in previous rounds of the draft. But, outside of that, I don't really see a sleeper who we're not thinking about, who moved on from Florida State being selected this year.
Yeah, we've already talked about AZ being a late first, early second round guy. Potentially, I think Farmer's a solidified day 2 pick. If he performs how we think he'll perform at the combine. I really don't see anyone else getting drafted. Maybe Cypress could slide in the 7th round, but I'd be pretty surprised. Same thing with Toa Philly, just with how deep this running back class is. I think I'd be pretty surprised to see him slide in. And as far as Fitz, a lot of people are saying this just isn't the year to draft a kicker. A lot of people would say it's never the year to draft a kicker, but especially this year, a lot of teams just don't feel this is the right year to use draft capital on specialists. But we'll see about Fitz. But I really think it's just going to be Farmer and AZ.
Mm-hmm. I say we end off this show with a commitment, D-Lou. Florida State landing a 3-star linebacker from Miami Central. Give us the scoop on that. I know we're a little late on it, but Florida State just now Florida State's new linebackers coach, previously coaching the defensive ends, still staying the special teams coach. But I think it's important to follow what JP's doing in that linebacker room because he has had some guys drafted into the league. As we're talking about the NFL draft, he's found success in developing linebackers. But he finds one down there in Miami Central who's had a handful of really big offers from the Power Four, Alabama, Miami, Florida. What's your take on this new pickup for Florida State on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, last week, Florida State landed 3-star linebacker Karan Maycock, like you said, out of South Florida. And this is a guy who's very, very talented, a little bit undersized right now when you're talking about projecting him as a linebacker at the college level, about 6'1", 200 pounds. But I mean, really has the potential to develop into a versatile defender once he gets to college, and is a guy that Florida State can use, not only as a linebacker, but maybe in certain scenarios in that defensive backfield as well. Someone who can kind of move all around the back end of that defense, brings plenty of physicality to the table, and, chose Florida State over, you mentioned it, multiple Power 5 offers. Now, he is going to take some official visits this summer. That includes a trip to Florida State in late June, but he's going to check out Miami, Penn State, and Alabama as well officially. So Florida State, even though they're getting this commitment in February, obviously still some work to do before we get to the early signing period in December. Maycock is coming off a junior season where he totaled 62 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and 3 pass deflections in just 8 games. And, interestingly enough, this decision comes just a couple of weeks after former Florida State star Derek Gibson was hired as the head coach at Miami Central. So, not really in the day and age anymore where you can consider a high school, a pipeline to Florida State, but always good to have a former FSU star down there in Miami to kind of help out with some of those recruiting ties. And we'll see if Florida State's able to land some more guys out of Miami Central in the future. But Maycock, the first linebacker to join Florida State in this 2026 class. Obviously, they're still taking a look at some of the other top prospects in the country. But, as of now, approaching the conclusion of February, Florida State sitting with 7 verbal commitments. Also picked up running back Amari Clemens a couple of weeks ago, and at number 12 in the country. So FSU should just continue to rise here in the spring, and we've already seen them set up some trips for guys to come in unofficially over these next few months. And it seems like that month of June is going to be huge for bringing in guys for official visits. So just the beginning for FSU as they look to secure a potential top 10 class.
I don't have the dates on me, but we do have spring camp coming, and it's pretty close now as we head into March. Can you share some of those dates with us, D-Lou, on FSU fans? I mean, I know it's the offseason, had a rough year, but it's a reset. It's time to figure out who's going to be, so some potential. To me, this is a really intriguing camp. I know we've gone through spring camps before under Mike Norvell, and how do you understand who's going to be in that rotation, who's going to be your starters? But these are 2 new coordinators, offensive and defensive. They're going to pick who they feel is best, the best personnel, and this is a really intriguing camp for me. But when are we, expected to be back out there onto the practice fields in Tallahassee?
Yeah, it's looking like about 3 weeks from yesterday. Florida State slated to begin spring camp on Wednesday, March 19th. So that date is closing in, and, for the most part, going to be going on Tuesdays and Thursdays for about the next 4 or 5 weeks after that, and going to be 15 total practices for Florida State. So we'll have a little bit more of an idea of availability and, how often we'll be able to be at these practices and what we'll be able to share hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, we're still waiting to see if, FSU is going to want to give some availability to the tour of duty, which usually happens at the end of tour of duty. But then also, too, there's some storylines of understanding what are these is going to look like? Are things going to change? That's been one of the hot topics for us this offseason, is seeing if these coordinators change some things up and seeing what Mike Norvell does, because it felt like a lot of things went stagnant and a lot of repetitive things. And whenever it translated onto the field on Saturdays, wasn't too pretty. So interested to see if some things change in that regard. But I think that's going to do it for this week's show on Hear the Spear. We'll have tons of content here from Indianapolis on the NFL Combine. Like I just said, we'll have Joshua Farmer here and the defensive lineman going at it. Then we'll have some DBs and Azrae Thomas, AZ, going on tomorrow as well. We'll have full coverage all across the board for you guys. So appreciate everybody always tuning in to us for an afternoon edition of Hear the Spear. Make sure you're following over there at NoleGameday.com across all of our social channels as well. Definitely check out our Instagram. We're going to get that back popping as well starting today. As over there and film some stuff and putting up a ton of interviews here on our YouTube channel too. Make sure you're subscribed. We just uploaded the AZ interview, 12 minutes long. So he brought up some really good points about his time at Florida State, what he's working on, and also to some NFL teams that he has and or yet spoken with. So tons of good content all across the board coming from us. So make sure you stay tuned to that. But as always, we appreciate you tuning in with us. Until next time, we'll see you next week. Someday, we don't really know what it may be, but we will see you next week on Hear the Spear. Appreciate you watching. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching.